welcome to Elvenhome and to this week's edition, which sees the topping out of the engine shed together with one or two other things to make it look a bit more real. I also have a look at a part of the layout that I meant to go back to do more scenic work, on which I really need your help, and I respond to a request from the last video to put something into the locomotive roster that hasn't run on the layout for quite a while. So let's get on and have a look at the latest bit of work on building the engine shed. Before I get too far advanced, I thought I'd better talk about the work that I'm doing to create the uprights that will sit underneath the central girder that runs the full length of the engine shed between the two canopies. To which, of course, are attached to all the trusses. Well, it couldn't possibly hold all that weight if it was only sort of held at each end. So it's got to have some uprights that are supporting and load bearing. When I talked about this a little while ago, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to use. At one time, I was going to use some Scenics roof canopy supports, which didn't just quite look right when I tried to use them for this purpose. And I think I came round to the idea that I was going to be using some H-beam, and Stephen Riley got in touch with me and pointed out that it was not uncommon for white paint to be used to highlight those areas so that people didn't walk into things, and particularly in and around an engine shed. And sent me some useful photographs which really helped cement in my mind what I wanted the uprights to look like, which is an H-beam upright, but the bottom of it is sunk into a kind of concrete surround, or a cement surround. I'm not sure which it would be, concrete probably. So that one, it didn't leave the open metal for people to walk into, and two, it helped strengthen the bottom of the beam as it goes down into the floor. So this is what I'm in the process of building. Now, what I'm using to do that, obviously H-beam. This is slightly thinner H-beam than was used here to create, because I think that's something like 4.8, and this is just 4, because I think that would be right. I don't think you would have anything quite as big as that. And obviously what I need is to create something at the bottom that makes it look as though it's sunk into a concrete surround. Rather handily, I had some of this tubing, I don't know whether it is tubing, but well, whatever it is, across the outside there. That's something like 6.3 millimeters. The inside is a bit of a pain because it's not an exact size. I think it's something like 5.25 millimeters, which is a real pain. But what I've been doing, and I'll show you one that's been completed. If I bring it up, you'll see if you look at the bottom, the H-beam is in there, and I've also put two wedges essentially, which is made from, and you can see it down here, 2 millimeter by 0.5 millimeter strip styrene, and the two of those plus the H-beam comes to 5 millimeters, so I'm shy 0.25 of a millimeter, but that really doesn't matter too much. And then in the top I've put some plastic putty to level that off, having glued it all in with plastic weld. So I ran through that rather quickly. I'll just go through making one so you can see what it is that I'm doing. So it's fairly straightforward. The first thing to do is that we take let's get this the right way around. It'd be a shame to get it wrong, wouldn't it? That slides in there, and you'll see that it's reasonably tight, but it's not perfect. It waggles around too much. So taking one of these and keeping your finger on the bottom so it doesn't slide straight the way through. Trying to see over the top of the camera. Put the first wedge in. And I've cut the wedges so they're slightly shorter than this, so they'll all go down inside, still holding the bottom, Put the second wedge in. There we go. So that's gone in now, and you'll see from the bottom that that's tightened it up quite a bit. What I do now is put it down on the floor, on the tabletop, because we want to get this, make sure everything's down at the bottom there. And then I learned to open a child-proof cap with one hand. Right, having opened the bottle, this is, you're trying to make sure that this is standing upright, which I think it is. And then the thing about Plastic World, if you've not used it before, is it does what it says on the jar. It welds the plastic together by making it melt, essentially. And I just allow capillary action to take some of this down the side, so that's welding the wedge to the upright and also to the inside wall of the tubing. Then I can turn that around and do the same on this side. Capillary action being a wonderful thing, it really does just take that right down to the bottom. And then just have a look to make sure it's straight. I need to do that off camera. There we go. And then I put some more on the bottom here. Just put the Plastic World bottle cap back on. Oops. So we don't knock it flying. The next thing to do is to close the gap that's sitting in the top here. If I bring that to there, you can see there's a gap, obviously, along the edge of the beam. And for that I use the Deluxe Perfect Plastic Putty. I've used also in the past for simpler things, this, which is Vallejo plastic putty. But if you've got a bigger job on, this is meatier in my experience. It's good stuff, this. Let's bring it into there. Get myself. I don't know if you can hear in the background, there's some snooker being played, and it's my wife's favourite player is not winning. All I do now is just put some of that into there, so I can start to close the gaps that are there. Never done this looking over the top of a camera before. It adds to the fun of working in N-gauge looking over the top of a camera, I can tell you. So, you can tell I'm concentrating. I'll stop talking. There we go. We're nearly there now. I'll tidy that up in a moment before it sets. Let me just get rid of the spare putty because I don't need that now. Right, well that will give you the idea. I'll tidy that up off camera, but it's not too bad. And that now is ready for painting. So I've done 3 of them. I've got 1 more to do, and then I'll get that painted. The only thing I've not yet quite got in my mind is how I'm going to attach them to the girder. I may just try simply sticking them on. So I need to think about how I'm going to attach them to the girder. but I'll just get that last one done, and then the next time you see them, they'll be painted up, and I will reveal to you how I'm going to attach them once I've worked it out. Okay. I thought I'd better stop before I got too far advanced in building the front wall for the engine shed. You'll recall that I said that there was going to be a small retaining wall that sits at the front and to the two sides at the front of the engine shed, over which the ladders will go that will give access to the gangway through which to get access onto the roof. This has been evolving as I've been thinking about it, and it suddenly dawned on me that if I didn't show you it here, all you'll see it at the end, and I wouldn't be able to explain very well how I'm putting it together. So what I've built here, if I bring this in a bit, you'll begin to see. This is sections of strip styrene, and there are 3 different widths of strip styrene, each of them made up of 1mm thick strip styrene. So the base is made up of 4mm by 1mm strip styrene, and then onto that I've stuck various bits of 3.2mm by 1mm strip styrene. I had quite a bit of offcuts of that, so until it's built a wall that's 4mm high, and I'll explain why in a moment. Then on the top there is a piece of 4.8mm by 1mm strip styrene to provide a kind of capping for it. On the ends, that again is 4mm by 1mm strip styrene, and on the back, which at the moment is covered in masking tape because I'm just about to do some painting, so I won't take this off. If I come in, I don't know whether it will focus on it, you might just be able to see that on the back there's some red Slater's 2mm brick card. If I bring that in and show you the right side, that's what's on there, which will be the back. So that this, you'll see this at the front. Now at the moment it's just about to get its first coat of green paint for the front. The back will be painted the same colour as the rest of the engine shed, which is rust by tan earth, I think was the other colour. I'll have to go back in my videos and find out which one it is. And then this will sit across the front, and I will put some walls either side to enclose the 2 side pieces. Across the front of this, the reason this has been built in this way was to enable me to put in the name of the depot, which is Weathertop. And as you'll see here, I've got the first letters in place for Weathertop. This is the 4mm Gill Sands lettering from Scale Model Scenery. I've used their stuff before. It's always very good. And I needed to make sure that I was spacing this out appropriately for the size of lettering that I was using. So I experimented until I came to as close as I could get with Gill Sands the lettering size. This is very, very slightly bigger than the 4mm Gill Sands lettering from Scale Model Scenery, very, very slightly. And then because I'd got that, I was then able to type this out, putting 2 spaces between each letter and 6 spaces between each word to give me that spacing. And then I was able to use that as the template to create these, and this comes in the kit. This is obviously for you to put the letters onto, and then that will be stuck onto the wall itself. And when I come to put these on, if I put this behind here, I will cut down these to give me the right gap between each one of the 3 pieces of support that's being used to stick the lettering on. So the lettering's just been painted up with the Vallejo gold. I'm very impressed with the Vallejo gold. It seems to give a really nice shine. So that's quite encouraging. So what I'm going to do now is paint this up. The next time you see this, it will be finished. So I thought if I didn't record this now, I would be trying to explain how I put the thing together in its finished state, which might be a bit tricky. So with that, let's get on, and you'll probably, the next time you see the engine shed, this will be adorning the front of it. Well, here you can see the engine shed with the name board in its place on top, and with the supporting columns now in their place. I did in the end work out how to get them to stay in, and I'll show you it in a bit closer, but just to give you an idea how this happens if I've got the right pieces in front of me. What I eventually did was to use a piece of the 4.8mm H-beam, which is the H-beam that was used to make the dividers between each of the wall panels. And the uprights were done with 4mm. And the 4mm, you will notice, goes inside the 4.8. And so I cut a hole which allowed me to insert each of the posts through the long piece of 4.8mm H-beam. That also helped me strengthen this front piece, because if I show you the finished model, just lift this up gently, you'll see there's the beam going across, and I also inserted it into a piece of card there to provide a plate, essentially, to give it more purchase. And then it was stuck between these two. You've not seen these before. I made these to cover in the wires, because I will cut a hole in the baseboard for the wires to go down, and you don't want to be seeing those. There is some painting touch-up needs doing, but nothing too horrible. So that also means that the roof has gone on, which I can now show you. So the roof is finished. Again, it's funny when you do the filming, you notice places where the paint hasn't taken, which you hadn't noticed before, but there you go. So the roof is on, the inside is now done. The only things left for me to do is some small walls either side here, and then also to do the walkway down the centre of the two roofs and the ladder that goes up, and I'll be working on those over the next week. But we are very close to starting to install this on the layout, I'm pleased to say. So that shows you where we've got to with the engine shed. I think it's about time that we went and had a look at the market. Following on from the discussion in the last video about figures, one of the things I've always wanted to do with the market area is to populate it with a decent number of people. But I'd never before come across any painted figures that I even remotely thought would do the job. And I do actually think that the figures that I bought for a £5 for 100 will do the job rather well, particularly given that most of them will not really be very visible. I started work on actually putting the market stalls into some semblance of order. They've all been individual before. These are the Metcalfe market stalls. The paper tops were the original ones that came in the kit, but I took a photocopy, which my wife then, I took a picture of them, which my wife was then able to digitally weather to give me the image of the awnings as though they'd been pretty weather beaten. They've been around a while. The sun and the wind and the rain and the smoke from the trains has got to them. And I think she did a fantastic job, actually, and I rather like them. But they were all individual, and I'd been toying a little bit in how on earth am I going to make them so that I could put them down on the layout. What I've done is to use some 2mm by 1mm stripped styrene, which I've left white, and I'll put up here an image of that I took a little bit earlier of, I think, one of the double market stalls. Just showing how the white strip of styrene is fed through at the top, and then each one is attached to it and butted up, so it gives me a nice straight row. And interestingly, having buttered them all up and got them all nice and straight, there's a lot more space here than there was before, which is rather good. Before I start sticking people into each of the stalls and in between them, I would like to put some lights in here, because I think there would be lights so that people could see what was going on. And maybe even into the shack at the back, which is an Ancorton Models, I think, if I remember rightly. There you are, Betty's Baps. But I'm not entirely sure which lamps would be the right ones to use. And this is where I would benefit from those of you who are more experienced and skilled in lighting things, about what you think you would use. It's obviously going to be a fairly low voltage light, because particularly with the paper awnings, if I put a light underneath those awnings, it's going to bleed out from the top. And I don't want this to be glaring light. It's the kind of warm yellowy light that one associates with markets of this kind, rather than big powerful lighting. But I have no idea what sorts of LEDs to go for this, or whether there may be something out there. I don't think I need to think about the Woodland Scenics Just Plug. They do some very small LEDs. Maybe that's the answer, because I think I'll probably need at least one light in each row, which might give enough light, but I don't know. So any help you can give me would be very gratefully received. With that, let's go on and complete a promise that I made after the last video for the B17 and the B1 to run. Bob, this is for you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that running session with the B17 and the B1 running. The B17 pulling a rake of Gresley teak coaches, with the B1 with a rake of Thompson teaks sitting behind it. It's good to get these engines out. I think I'd forgotten by storing them all in the old engine sheds that the main reason I got them was to run them. So that just about brings this edition of Elvenhome to a close. I really will be interested in any views you have about how I might light the market stalls, because I think it will add a nice bit of light to that area, but not too strong light, and I've got no idea really how to go about doing it. If you've liked the video, well, please do give it a thumbs up. That's all very helpful. And if you haven't subscribed, well, please do subscribe and hit the bell notification so that you know when I'm uploading videos. And of course, if you've got any other comments that you want to make, or if you want to make a request for engines to run in a running session, then do feel free to let me know. But until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.